Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. I hope everyone's doing well. We've got only a few people in the chat. YouTube kind of was messing around with me tonight. They kept the stream private, even though I made it public at 8 o'clock. So, just, bit of a hiccup. I had a couple of other software issues going on here, but I got those solved. We've got a couple of interesting guests for you tonight. First of all, joining us in just a few minutes is a gentleman by the name of Eliahi Priest. He's got some very interesting stuff going on, some cool things to talk about. And then at 10 o'clock, quite frankly, is going to be joining us. Thank you very much to everyone who's here so far. We have a quick word from my sponsor we're going to listen to, and then we're going to get right into it. Do you guys ever wake up with a stiff neck or find yourself trying to relieve tension in the middle of a workday? Well, I have, and neck pain sucks. I totally get it. The neck hammock is great because it's a simple, portable device that uses cervical traction to provide neck pain release in just 10 minutes or less each day. That's right, just 10 minutes. Cervical traction works by stretching your muscles to release that built-up tension, and it's the most effective way to alleviate neck pain and has been used by physical therapists and chiropractors for decades. And with the neck hammock, you can have it anywhere, anytime you want. Alleviate tension. Do you guys ever wake up with a stiff neck or find yourself trying to relieve tension in the middle of a workday? Well, I have, and neck pain sucks. I totally get it. The neck hammock is great because it's a simple, portable device that uses cervical traction to provide neck pain release in just 10 minutes or less each day. That's right, just 10 minutes. Cervical traction works by stretching your muscles to release that built-up tension, and it's the most effective way to alleviate neck pain and has been used by physical therapists and chiropractors for decades. And with the neck hammock, you can have it anywhere, anytime you want. Alleviate tension headaches, relieve pinched nerves, reduce herniated discs, relieve overall pressure, and melt away tension. The neck hammock does it all, and it feels amazing. I've used it. I can say that it works. It's so amazing that test users started falling asleep in them. Setup is really easy. You just wrap the strap around a railing, squeeze it between a door hinge, or hook it on a door handle and clip the cord and relax. If you have 10 minutes, you have time to get rid of neck pain for good. You can try it yourself at www.supportyourneck.com. All right. You guys, I have had some major software issues tonight. The neck hammock is a great product. I've actually used it. I use it on a daily basis because I have stress headaches and tension headaches, and it works for me. So if I ever actually use a product on this channel, I'm actually going to tell you about it because I believe in it. So I've had some extreme issues with sound tonight. Also, let's see. Hold on. I think that I figured out how this has to work. Let me test something. You guys, we're going to test some audio on something else, and I need you guys to tell me if you hear it. So let me see. We'll just try for the audio on that commercial again. Do you guys ever wake up with a stiff neck or find yourself trying to relieve tension in the middle of it either? Let's see. Let's try that one. Workday. Well, I have, and neck pain sucks. I totally get it. The neck hammock is great because it's a simple portable device that uses cervical traction to provide neck pain release in just 10 minutes or less each day. That's right, just 10 minutes.
Should be hearing
Cervical
the commercial.
traction works by stretching your muscles to release that built-up tension, and it's the most effective way to alleviate neck pain and has been used by physical therapists and chiropractors for decades. And with the neck hammock, you can have it anywhere, You guys can hear that right there, the commercial that was playing just now? Please say yes in the chat if you did hear it. 5x5, yes. Looks like it's coming up. Yes, 5x5. Okay, great. The reason that's so important is because I have to make sure that it works properly so that you guys will actually hear my guests when they call in. Out of nowhere, all of my software went down. So I had to uninstall and reinstall a ton of stuff today. I also had to do some readjustments on the stream. I was attempting to do a new thing, a new way to stream, and that didn't work. So I accidentally sent out a notification at like 7 o'clock, and it was just kind of annoying. So thanks for sticking with me, guys. We're going to give my guest a call right now, and we're going to bring him into the line. Coming up next, this is Eliahi Priest. Mr. Priest, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you, Red Pill?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, if we can get a 5x5 on my guest, Eliahi, can you please give us a little introduction so we can make sure that the audience can hear you?
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Eliahi Priest. I've been a campaigner in this space for over 2 decades, I'd say. I've been around considerably since the days of the Disclosure Project with Carol Rosen. I was quite young, in my early 20s, when the Disclosure Project came out, and to me that was a significant eye-opener. Since the days of Stephen Kaplan and the New Energy movement, when we first started to hear about out-of-the-box technologies, this was very much an interest to me. Of course, Nikola Tesla and the suppression of that technology has been a pretty key subject, I know, and the relationship to Trump and Tesla. I'm pretty sure you've covered that, yeah, Red Pill?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, so I came across you probably about a year ago. I was on YouTube, as I normally would be at work, and I was searching for awesome stuff to watch. And I believe that I was looking for stuff having to do with the shenanigans with the clowns in America back in the 80s. And yeah, I came across this phone call, or a series of phone calls, shall I say, that were between you and some guys that were they were some agents or something like that. And then there was all this stuff having to do with the 5-Star Trust. So I started looking around, and I was just watching these videos, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away by the way that you were able to rope these guys in. So tell us about starting with that. How did you get involved with these people and start kind of stumble onto all this information?
Yeah, amazing story, really, and I'll try and summarize it because, of course, it's like fitting decades of work into an hour. So I'm going to do the best that I can to condense it in a way that we can really have a good discussion with this and cover as much as possible today. So I was just an everyday, and still am, just an everyday Aussie who saw this technology, who saw the corruption in the world, like we do, like we all do, from our different lenses and perspectives. We know that it's bad, and that there's solutions to it. And so I started to really pursue these solutions in my early 20s, particularly and more formatively in my mid to late 20s. And I think one of the first things that gave me a platform, or just really solid education outside of just digesting the internet, keeping in mind that this was just before YouTube had arrived on the scene. We're talking about even before Google had arrived on the scene, when I'd first started to do research into this area. And then obviously as things progressed, networking's become a bit easier. So I think more of a formative time was when I reached out to speak to the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which was set up by Carol Rosen, who was one of the witnesses on the Disclosure Project.
Yes, I'm familiar with Carol's work and the Disclosure Project.
Yeah, fantastic. So through that, I was hanging out closely with luminaries like we had Sir Arthur C. Clarke as chairman on the board of the Institute, and Edgar Mitchell, former astronaut, not getting into the discrepancies of NASA, but at the end of the day, that level of credibility. And in fact, speaking of the discrepancies of NASA, Edgar Mitchell actually came out on mainstream UK radio and spoke a few years before he died, I think it was, of the US government's knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomena and extraterrestrial craft. Right. And these were words out of Edgar Mitchell's mouth, who in the mainstream is considered the astronaut who holds the record for the longest moonwalk. So that's pretty significant.
And now, forgive me if I'm wrong, wasn't Edgar Mitchell also keyed in with Disclosure Project? I mean, I believe he did several interviews with them as well.
Yeah, I think he was as well. And that's obviously the proximity to Carol Rosen and Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian Defence Minister.
Yep. So
there were some significant heavyweights. And because of that, straight away I went from being a researcher with a computer to being actively involved in these networks. I've got an entrepreneurial streak, so that enabled me to be able to move in these circles pretty rapidly and elevate my own knowledge and profile with these people. And, from there and being involved in the operational side of disclosure and of unearthing these technologies, I moved into, was projected into the financial aspect of A, why these technologies weren't being funded, and B, who is currently funding the ones in unacknowledged special access programs and into those higher levels of security clearance. And it was in that research that I stumbled into these off-balance accounts and accounting procedures.
Okay, all right, cool. So this is like the secret space program stuff that you're talking about, the off-balance stuff. What's her name? Catherine Austin Fitz. Doesn't she talk about this a lot?
Yeah, that her name certainly rings a bell, though I'm not across her work thoroughly. In saying that, I'm very careful when it comes to making claims about the secret space program. I'm not saying there's a full-blown program because I don't have enough proof of that. Mm-hmm. All I can confirm is what I've been told that came from Wernher von Braun himself, the father of space, is that we had vehicles that hovered up above the ground in the 50s.
Yep.
And that alone is a significant situation.
Oh yeah.
And that there are former guys who have come out from the Air Force and said, no, there's these foreign craft, they defy the laws of physics, so on and so forth. I'm very careful to sort of stopping around that point to say, yes, there is examples of phenomena. Yes, the US government has invested in it. And yes, former members of the MOD in the UK and the DOD in the US have come out and started to speak about these things. But going as far as to say that there's a full-blown program and that we're visiting Mars and all of these other stories you find on the internet, I don't support that at all because there's no evidence of it.
Well,
so
this is actually a perfect time for you to be on the show and us talking about this because this is something I actually just covered this week. The United States Navy released the fact that they received a patent for an anti-gravity propulsion device just this week. It was, and it's a TR-3B. I'm sure you know what a TR-3B is, but it's a delta-shaped craft. It has like a mercury drive, and it creates like a slipstream of space-time around the vehicle so that it can go up, down, left, right, sideways, and backwards. All at 10,000 kilometers an hour. So, and like I was saying at that time, just the other night, anytime you see something that's released as a disclosure to the public, you can bet that that's something that's already been operational within the military-industrial complex for 30 plus years or more. So, and I think that one of the reasons that it's coming out now is because now we've had Trump say that we've got the Space Force, so there's going to have to be craft that are the inaugural ships, so to speak, for this new branch of the military, which is going to be operating up in space.
You got it.
Yep.
And I think this is the thing that just really coming back to, and I'm glad we're covering this because I don't really talk about it that much anymore, because there's been a lot of people who came out subsequently and have really just tinfoil hatted the subject to the point of almost no return. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a very real subject, and I treat it with utmost respect. And I'm very careful in the way that it's discussed because it's so important. I mean, we've been standing on the cusp of a quantum future for half a century, and it's been kept from us.
Yes.
And the longer it's kept from us is the longer that more people are dying, more innocent people are dying. And to me, that's aggravating. And that aggravation and that sort of pure outrage at this level of corruption has been a major fuel for me to go in as deeply as I have. So it's not because, and this is what I premise based off the evidence in the Insignia Gate folder, it's not because of the cocaine trafficking that they don't want to touch this. It's because the cocaine trafficking leads into a banking account infrastructure that exists off balance of the mainstream economy, that exists in multiple banks around the world, multiple central banks around the world, and is protected with the same layers of security clearance in a financial sense that the hidden technology is protected in a physical and armed guard. And, you know, just look at Area 51, for instance, for anyone who's tried to get in there. Mm-hmm. So if that's the level of security they have around Area 51, it stands to reason that parallel, that's the level of digital and social construct security they have around the banking instruments that have to fund these gargantuan projects.
Yeah, well, this is a perfect time to jump into Insignia Gate and this specifically. So tell us about that.
Right. So Insignia Gate started when I tried to, I mean, I got involved in some interesting things, you know, financially speaking. I got placed very highly to try and find money for the Space Preservation Treaty, which was the Institute's main goal, and to fund some of these more promising technologies. And there was bank-to-bank transactions being discussed and this and that and the other. And eventually we got to talking about funds that just never arrived. They were the perfect example of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that the closer you got, the further away it got. And that type of phenomena had been happening across the spectrum for many, many years, in the sense that there were serious academics involved and serious financial guys involved in monetizing these accounts, and they just could never seem to do it. And it was always going to be next week or the week after that, or no, just a few more days and this has to happen, but the money would never come.
So now, these are individuals that you guys had solicited for donations to this organization?
Correct. Solicited for donations or investment into the technologists that I was working with in the new energy space, you know, 0 point energy, all of that sort of thing. And it just did my head in. I was like, hang on a minute, we have this document, we have this document, we have this agreement. Why isn't this money coming? Mm-hmm. What's going on here? And so I started to really, really look into it. I stopped waiting for the money to come, and I started holding the people accountable who made agreements that the money was coming. And then I started to confront the corruption. And what it appears is that there are a group of entrepreneurs and people who know well about the collateral accounts or the global debt facility or whatever you want to call it. And the way they keep them silent is by this gold fever mentality where the people and the self-importance, and they all think they're going to be the ones to monetize the collateral accounts. And so they're not making the information public. And this is a great way to keep greedy people completely silent because they don't want to jeopardize their chances of possibly being able to receive this money. And we're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars here. Right. I didn't realize it was trillions at the time. I just thought it was, several hundred million, couple of billion. It was still massive money. But then the more I've looked into the collateral accounts and the global debt facility, well, this this is a massive market. I mean, it completely eclipses the on-balance economy, let's call it, the one you and I live in, the civilian economy, where all the banks report their balance figures at the end of the year. All the countries report their GDP and their outgoings and their incomings and all of that. And it's all on bits of balance notes digitally and, hard copy around the world. But then you have this off-balance one. And the off-balance one was set up for a number of reasons. And first and foremost, it started to really gain traction during the CIA financing of the rebels in Nicaragua, the Contra affair. And they started to work with banks in a more fundamental and close proximity. This was at the formation of the CIA's need to self-finance. And this is what the FBI document really talks about. And it's a document that hasn't been examined properly by...
I'm sorry, which folder is that in so I can pull it up on screen?
Yeah, sure. So in Key Documents, folder 3.
Key Documents, folder 3. So that would be, I got Accounts, Berry Seal, Black Eagle.
Yep, so Key Documents, and then you go to Classified Government Releases.
Okay, got it. All right, and then...
And then if you bring up FBI Eagle 2 and also the cover note for FBI, the cover note is something that I wrote very recently, and so it's a good one to go over as well, just have a little look at and direct people to.
Okay, while I'm getting it pulled up, go ahead and talk about it because it'll take a second for it to download. And
yeah,
then
great.
Also, do you mind if I drop the link to this folder into the chat?
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to do that. Occasionally the folder link changes.
Okay.
But yeah, just to show that this is a cover note that just went out to the Australian government through a colleague that had requested it. And it's a great way to sum up the validity of this document. And basically, it goes on to say, the enclosed Eagle 2 FBI document was sourced by Lord David James of Blackheath, who sits as a Conservative in the UK House of Lords. Lord James was nominated for his lordship by former Chief of British Intelligence Sir John Scarlett for James's contribution to British security. So Lord James, this guy is no lackey. When you're nominated by the former boss of MI6 for your contribution to British security, you are clearly someone who has his head screwed on. Period.
And Lord James he's a member of the House of Lords in the UK.
He is.
Okay.
Still currently a member. He's getting pretty old, which is why I have a sense of urgency as well.
Sure. To
continue to push this, because I think having Lord James as a witness, once this reaches congressional hearing level or public inquiry level at the least, is pretty essential.
All right, and then tell us, how did you get in touch with Lord James? Was that through your association with this NGO for the space work?
No, it's as simple as I'm an entrepreneur, and when I saw Lord James talking on the news about these exact same accounts and having the exact same frustration, or beginning to, that I had, I went, this guy has no idea what he's about to get involved in. And I could tell by the fact that he was talking about it, he wasn't one of them. Okay, so I went, wow, he's an outsider outside of the little Rothschild Lord clique, and he's coming public with this to try and alleviate British debt. Okay, I actually just looked up his number on the House of Lords directory and called him and spoke to him, luckily, at his office. And the conversation was pretty quick. He went, okay, yes. Well, and he was a bit dismissive, to be perfectly honest. And before he went, I said to him, look, Lord James, very quickly you're going to hit your head up against a brick wall, and it'll be the hardest wall you've ever hit, and you won't know what's hit you. And I said, then you'll want to talk to me. And so I left him for a week or two and called him back. And he went, thank God you called. And we became quite close colleagues. I'd even say friends, because we're talking about cricket and relationships. And he'd call me at, 5 a.m. in the morning when I was still in my boxer shorts, in the UK. So we worked very closely together, and I facilitated a lot of information exchange with him. And we worked very, very highly in intelligence circles internationally between the UK and the US, despite the Australian government's shock and horror how such a thing could occur. I assure everyone on this live feed tonight that it did occur, and I've been involved in some of the most strategically leveraged intel negotiations between the UK and between UK and the US that have ever gone down.
Let's talk about this FBI document, FBI Eagle 2, because this is to Senator Edward Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it's from, who is this from?
It doesn't say who the asset was. From further investigation, we are informed, or we're told, that it was a former school friend of Senator Edward Kennedy, but it was someone working within the FBI.
Okay.
Now, one of the first things I did when I got this document was to check its authenticity. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I took this document to Nora Maccabee, who was a former energy advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the DOD, and her husband is Major Todd Hathaway. Okay, so they were working in the Defense Threat Reduction Agency in the US. Todd's a good guy. He was doing some serious stuff in the disclosure movement and really trolling Stephen Greer quite significantly for Greer, to be more honest. So I had a relatively strong working relationship with this couple for a number of years. And I just called Nora on her mobile phone, knowing that she was highly placed in Washington as a Washington socialite. And I asked her to take the document to her friends in the FBI and tell me what they said. And I did this all through encrypted means. Mm-hmm. And anyway, she came back to me a few days later, and she'd spoken to her senior friends in the FBI, and she said this is a legitimate document.
All right, and what is the what's the summation of the document? What's
so the summation of the document is simply this: that the CIA at one point got to the point where it was too arrogant to want to go to Congress to seek congressional approval for its projects. It needed to find a way to self-finance. So 5 men set up the Five Star Trust: George Bush Sr., William Colby, Lansdale, Lieutenant Colonel Ferreira, and Richard Armitage, who is the only member of the Five Star Trust that we can say for sure is still alive. If Ferreira is still alive, he's mid-90s, living in a CIA safe house in Norway, probably, with some elderly people, like elderly support type of thing. He's right. He's sort of George Bush Sr.'s era, and obviously we lost Bush Sr. last November. Well, we didn't lose him because he was probably a good person to remove from the earth.
He was removed.
he was removed. So those 5 men went, oh, okay, what do any 5 guys do when they get together and want to make money illegally? Oh, drugs. Perfect. We've got the entire might of the CIA at our disposal. We can run black ops and we can traffic drugs. Now, everyone knows they did that. The CIA even admitted to doing that.
That's right.
Thanks to the work of brilliant hero journalist Gary Webb.
Yep.
And Gary, of course, they made his life a living hell. And I am reliably told, actually, by Gary's son, bless them, that the tragic family circumstances that Gary did, in fact, actually take his own life.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't a CIA hit, and that comes from Gary's son, who saw the letters and everything. And, I'm going to take Gary's son's, word on that, as opposed to anything else, because it's the best eyewitness account that I had. It was actually Gary's son who found Gary dead.
Oh, was it? Oh, that's horrible. I know that the whole affair just destroyed him because, it tore his family apart. He completely lost, his entire career. He won awards for that reporting, but they did everything they could to just to crush him so that he couldn't continue to work. And, for a man like Gary Webb, when you can't write for a living, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it eventually got to him, but not without leaving this incredible pioneering legacy for US freedom and democracy. Mm-hmm. I believe that Gary Webb will be remembered and regarded in the future as one of the all-time heroes of the United States.
and he should rightfully be in the Hall of Fame of some description because of his sacrifice.
I would agree. I would agree. And I just want to
Yeah.
tell everybody that inside this folder is multiple different copies of Dark Alliance by Gary Webb. It's a powerful piece of literature. You guys really should check it out. Great book.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, those notes are there for government agencies for reference, because this has been heavily scrutinised by Australian intelligence agencies, and we'll get into the Australian connection shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But just wanted to add to that as well. If anyone wants to contribute to the Webb family's sort of trust, you can either A, buy the book, or B, watch Kill the Messenger.
Yep, Kill the Messenger is a great movie, you guys. They did a real good job on that.
They really did, yeah. So
now, real quick, back to
what
was it Miguel or the general's name? I forgot his name.
Lieutenant Colonel Ferreira.
Lieutenant Colonel Ferreira. Okay. So he would be the last surviving member of the Five-Star Trust. The Five-Star Trust, again, was the trust account set up to funnel all the Black Ops money into. It was used to, kind of build the investment and then support the black operations that the Clowns in America and all of these other off-book projects were funded through. And if he's the last surviving owner,
just as an interruption, a little correction. There's he may be, but Richard Armitage is very much still alive.
Oh, okay, so let's go with Armitage then, because he's public.
Yep.
So if Armitage is the last surviving owner of the trust, if he passes away, does that mean that all that money is just lost? I would imagine they must have some type of safeguard set up.
No, Ferreira ended up passing the trust money over to Marion Horn. Okay, so that's talked about in the documentation. And there's other documentation that points to Marion Horn. But at some point at the same time, you now have multiple power agencies and multiple factions battling over these codes to transact that money. So there's, as you can imagine, with that level of power, just like a nuclear weapon has security codes, these accounts have security codes.
Yeah, okay, I would imagine.
Because you can crash whole economies at the touch of a button,
Sure.
Probably more devastating than a nuclear weapon are these accounts. It's unlimited power to a select few. And that's the key issue here. I don't think Armitage has any association with that. I know that Ferreira continued to, because this is the Lord James connection. Ferreira changed his name to Lorin William Rosier, General Lorin William Rosier. And it was Rosier's group, Pure Heart, the Pure Heart Foundation, which Lord James was calling Foundation X, because at some point, somehow a group managed to get this money off balance from the Federal Reserve Bank on balance to JP Morgan, and then over to the Royal Bank of Scotland global account. And there's evidence of those SWIFTs. And now we know that transaction occurred. It was 3 SWIFTs of $5 trillion.
And this is what Lord James brought up in the House of Lords, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
I've actually got a little bit of footage of that. I wanted to just pull that up briefly. Let's see. You guys were going to listen to a small sample of this just so you can see what we're talking about.
My lords, I'm going to start. I don't wish you to get too encouraged by that. I'm going to start with my conclusions, but I'm not going to sit down when I've made them, because I'm going then to give you the evidence to support them and hopefully present to you the reasons why I want support for an official inquiry into the mischief I want to unfold to yourselves this afternoon. My lords, I've been engaged in this pursuit of this issue for nearly 2 years now, and I'm no further through to getting to the truth. I think there are 3 possible conclusions which may come from it. I think there may have been a massive piece of money laundering committed by a major government which ought to know better, and that it has effectively undermined the integrity of a British bank, the Royal Bank of Scotland, in doing so. The second alternative is that a major American department has an agency which has gone rogue on it because it has been wound up and has created a structure out of which they are seeking to get, well, at least 50 billion euros as a payoff. And the third possibility is that this is an extraordinary elaborate fraud which has not been carried out, but which has been prepared in order to provide a threat to one government or more if they don't pay them off. So there are three possibilities, and this all needs a very urgent review. My Lords, it starts in April and May of 2009 with the alleged transfer to the United Kingdom, to the HSBC, of a sum of $50 trillion.
Now, did he say 50 trillion or 15 trillion?
15 trillion.
15. Okay. All right.
Yep.
So someone in the United States transfers $15 trillion to England, essentially, or the UK rather.
Yep.
And it caught the attention of just Lord James, or this caught the attention of people within the banking industry?
Well, actually, what happened is it obviously, in the Royal Bank of Scotland, they have security protocols, and they call them Chinese boxes. And between these Chinese boxes, they have Chinese walls. And then certain individuals across departments need border crossing permissions to even have discussions. And that's from an executive secretary who worked at RBS. So this I know.
Okay.
So what happened is, I think the UK got this money and then didn't want to give it back.
Okay, of course. Why would they?
Yeah. So, and when I say the UK, I'm not talking about the UK government. I'm talking about the deep state, of course, within the UK. And so this was an unofficial operation. They got 15 trillion and went, thank you very much. And then Rosia, which is Ferreira, and his crew went, well, hang on a minute, we need to get this money back.
Can you imagine? You accidentally transfer $15 trillion and your boss wants to know what happened.
Exactly.
All right.
And Lord James was approached. I'm not entirely sure why they identified him, but he's a forensic financial guy. He worked with the Bank of England to clean IRA funds, to get IRA funds sort of managed back into the bank. He was the man who bailed out the Millennium Dome, which is that massive dome in London that you'll see. It was about to go through into a financial sort of default and collapse. Yeah. And they called Lord James in, and he managed to rescue that that business. So he's a very smart financial guy. And when he conducted forensics on this, he kept coming up to the fact that, hang on a minute, this is very, very real.
So not just some accounting error, not some, Prince of Nigeria scam. This is an actual transfer of $15 trillion. Wow. Yeah. All right. So what ended up happening with the money?
So I'm going to, it's a great opportunity when you said it's not a Prince of Nigeria scam.
Yeah.
So Lord James was then being fed intel by a CIA agent. Okay.
Okay.
And that CIA agent told us Obama was coming to the UK on a state visit to meet David Cameron to discuss this issue. Now, at the time in 2011, it was another one of those incidents where the US was reaching its debt ceiling, which ironically at the time was around $15 trillion. And we knew that before the press announced it. And so that confirmed the validity of the intel we were getting from this CIA agent, because the press announced Obama coming within the same window of time, about a week or 2 weeks after the fact that we were told about it, which isn't strange considering Lord James is a lord, so he's privy to this type of information and arrangements. But the interesting point was that we were told by the CIA agent that one of the main discussions was this $15 trillion situation, these SWIFTs. Now, I can't confirm what was discussed in that meeting. Of course, I don't have that. Well, I didn't have that type of specific access to those meetings, but we know that in 2011, and in fact, I can bring up an article somewhere if need be, that meeting did occur. And the interesting part of that meeting, it was one of those mornings where I was woken up by Lord James the next day after President or former President Barack Obama and former Prime Minister David Cameron met. Lord Strathclyde, who at the time was the boss of the House of Lords, called Lord James into an urgent meeting first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. So as soon as Lord James arrives in the House of Lords, he's called into the meeting, and Lord Strathclyde's there with the boss of the Parliamentary Ethics Committee. I don't know her name, but Lord James does. And he's been given the second degree about all of this stuff. And, to the effect of, Lord James, you're making a fool of us. You're making a fool of yourself. What's worse, you're making a fool of us. You must cease this investigation immediately. Now, keep in mind that Obama and Cameron met the day before.
Mm-hmm.
In what world does an urgent meeting first thing in the morning, like before 9 o'clock this happened, I think it was like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, it's obviously very important. And all of the meetings, it's like it's a massive sort of chain reaction of meetings that happen down the chain of command as a result of a Prime Minister and President meeting. And if you're the boss of the House of Lords, you're not going to be covering a trivial issue first thing in the morning.
No.
So Lord James then says, well, no, I insist. I'm going to keep investigating it. Strathclyde then says, this is nothing more than an Ivory Coast scam. And Lord James says, well, I disagree. This is not one of those. The intelligence I have suggests it's quite the opposite. And Lord Strathclyde then says, his voice taking on another firmer tone, well, Lord James, you are now being ordered to stand down. You are interfering in the highest level of British security since World War II.
Wow. I can't imagine that if it was just some type of scam and that they didn't want him talking about it because it was embarrassing to the House of Lords, that he would have to happen to phrase it that way. I mean,
exactly.
that gives it away. It's
that
obviously,
gives it away.
This is real. We don't want you talking about it because it's some deep doo-doo.
Exactly. And if it was, you look at it like this, if it was an Ivory Coast scam, you don't need to be discussing that first thing in the morning after a president and bloody prime minister meet.
No.
That's sort of business for next week type of thing. So we know that discussion happened. And the key about this isn't information I read off the internet. Lord Strathclyde would have gone back to talk to David Cameron from that meeting, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And Lord James reported back to me. Okay, that's the level of power and engagement I've been dealing at, operating my own little boutique intelligence agency. And that led to discussions to having the attaché of the then Director of Central Intelligence, Leon Panetta, his assistant, reach out to me to invite me onto encrypted CIA channel to try and negotiate with me through Lord James to get this money back, because they'd exhausted all their other channels. They weren't working. So they knew the only one left was Lord James, and I was the only one that could then get to him because Lord James was doing everything I asked.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
But what's even crazier about it is to think about the fact that these are like different factions of different deep states, the people on your side or on Lord James's side of the pond, they're salivating at the idea that they just had this windfall of $15 trillion. And meanwhile, Leon is having trouble financing his black operations, so he's like, I really need that money back, guys. And we're not screwing around.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that led to you getting, into this encrypted cloud comm system. Now, correct. Before that happened, did you have those other conversations with like Clancy and the other guys? And I should mention, we've got a former guest in the audience, Ben Shemkis. He wanted me to mention that Clancy is his brother Matt. And yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Well, I spoke to Ben briefly, and I did then call his brother Matt. I can't confirm that his brother Matt is Clancy.
Okay.
Sounds similar, but until I can have his brother Matt say, yes, I'm Clancy, I'm not sure. Now, that whole situation has been really productive because I cleaned a lot of trash and disinfo out of some very important networks. Now, one of the reasons I was following up on that network was because of, what's the guy's name? Not Clancy. There was another one who mentioned on that phone call that he had majestic security clearance.
Yeah,
now,
I remember.
Yeah. Just keep in mind that that phone call happened only a year ago or so, 12 months, 18 months ago. So that's more recent activity. They mentioned the five-star trust as well.
Okay.
And these conversations that I had with these guys in the CIA happened back in 2011.
That's right.
And there are, if you go to the Insignia Gate folder, and you type in, actually, I'll find the best one, witness testimony. Oh, yeah, folder 10, witness and criminal recordings.
Where is it? I see.
So in the main folder and folder 10.
Witness and criminal. Got it. Okay. Oh, yeah, the kill order.
So you got the kill order. Now, that kill order came from the same guys I'm speaking to in the other two files, FST Encrypted Comms and FST Release 3.
Okay.
So at one point, we were told that Lord James should seek counsel with the Queen of England. Yeah, this was the sort of thing that was happening. And Lord James and I were like, well, that's ridiculous. We can't just go and speak to the Queen. And we just shook our heads and went, these guys are nuts. And so we didn't follow through on that request, which we didn't know had seriously come from Leon Panetta at the time. So it was in one of these conversations, and unfortunately I don't have it recorded. We were told by the guy M, who you hear on those phone calls, that we were in breach of Protocol 4.
And what is Protocol 4?
I had no idea. I was like, well, to be perfectly honest, and I just got fed up. I was at that point of being fed up, and I just said, well, to be perfectly honest, I don't give a few, there was a few swear words and expletives.
Right.
And I told the director of Central Intelligence through M where to go in no uncertain terms. And generally, when you swear and call a director of Central Intelligence a couple of Aussie slang insults, that'll terminate your relationship with the CIA, which it did.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sorry, go.
I was just gonna do the lead up into this conversation so we can hear it. Well, just give us a brief intro onto how you got this conversation, and then we'll go ahead and hear it.
Sure. Okay. Because of my reputation with Lord James, I was invited onto this encrypted platform. There are a number of steps I had to take through different channels of encryption to even find the place to download the platform. I had several discussions, which you'll see in those folders, with M, who was the attaché to the Director of Central Intelligence, Leon Panetta. I told Panetta where to go, not directly, but through M. I logged off the platform, didn't get back on for a week, and then my curiosity got the better of me. I thought, I wonder if I can still log on. And I could. And when I logged on, I found that M and another guy had left a recording of one of their conversations on the platform. So being the inquisitive guy that I am, I hit play, and it absolutely, was incredulous what I was hearing. Now, you couldn't save anything off that platform, so this recording you'll hear was literally recorded onto my own recording device in the room at the time while this recording was playing off the platform, and it's uploaded here for your listening pleasure.
Excellent. So this was basically a clown party line, an encrypted clown party line, where they logged in and they had invited you to, and they just so happened to leave a conversation on there that you grabbed. So you guys, you can see on the screen what the title of that is. Get ready, because this is a big one.
You there? Hello. Hi there. I'm here. Howdy, howdy, neighborly. Yeah, he's surprised you. It's a funny matter. The accounts were released, but we're waiting on security protocols right now. And that's coming from the other side. So we're waiting for Vladimir to consign the letter. And once that goes into place, then I've been asked to actually activate the teams, and we've been given a green light on initiating a strike on a particular individual. His code name is White Cat. I told him that I was working with two teams, one DCI is familiar with, which is you, and another team, which is a MILAB unit.
Okay.
So I'm just going to leave it at that because I know a lot is being left unsaid over digital channels, and we are propagating for a tabletop meeting for full rollout. Here's my concern right now. They have a strong emphasis on who they're working with, and I have a firm knowledge that there are only two funding sources. One is that of 41, and the operative who we've been given green light on, but they have no ability to access the capital. All they can do is move and show, so as to motivate people as if they have money but really not have access. And they know they have no access, but they're using it to con and manipulate world leaders right now. And then two is us and our ability to move capital.
Yeah. I think we're just pushing the inevitable anyway, because we know somebody has some cleanup. Those guys are just not going to go away. So
No, they're not.
Somebody either has to make them an offer that they can't refuse, or we're going to have a cleanup. And we're going to end up having to terminate somebody with prejudice to get their attention.
The guy I'm worried about right now is on a subject matter. Have you been updated or briefed on a man known as White Cat?
No. That's a new name to me.
This is one to be feared. This is one who's put several of my men 6 feet under, and he's also he's been known. He has no conscience. He's gone after their children. He's placed one of my mentors' child, 23-year-old, has nothing to do with this industry. Realigned his jaw and shattered it. Put him in a coma for 1 month. So this man has now been given a green light. He, just to give you a level of who he is, he thinks that he is the G.
Is what?
So he thinks he's the general.
He does.
And
Okay.
he's not. Yeah, and he's not. He is not. He will not have that ability. He has played his hand too soon. The general is not dead. He is still alive. So what he's done is made irreparable and irreconcilable moves. And I'm told that when we get funding this week, that is the first mission I need to activate is his extraction with prejudice.
Okay.
So what we just heard was a recorded conversation between someone, someone in power in the agency, giving a hit order to another agent regarding this guy who apparently got a bit too big of a head, it sounds like, and maybe went a little further beyond the established rules of the agency. So that is pretty incredible stuff right there. I wish we had more time to listen to some of those other phone calls, but but people can. I've already put the link to your website in the description below, so people will be able to get to all that stuff after the show. But we've got about 8 minutes left, Eliahi. What other points do we want to hit before we have to go?
Well, just quickly, one thing. That recording, as well as all this information, has been given across the spectrum of law enforcement and the security intelligence departments in Australia, because this links to the CIA involvement in the Nugan Bank, which was basically a money laundering operation for the CIA, for William Colby, and the FBI document confirms that sort of thing. I'm not going to go into the details about that explicitly because I do want to cover the reason why we're all here, thanks to you, Red Pill, is QAnon and is President Donald Trump.
That's right.
Okay? I totally get that. And there are some who have heard me speak very negatively, let's say, and brazenly about Trump and also about QAnon in the most recent months.
So yeah, obviously, I'm a huge fan of both, Trump and the Q team. But I remember seeing a couple months ago that when Q had mentioned koala in one of the posts. I took that to be a dig at Five Eyes, at Australia, and in terms of the Five Eyes operation. But it looked to me like you had some personal stake in it. So maybe you can explain that.
Well, I've used koala as a intelligence meme in certain security caveats that I've set up. I'm not an idiot. I don't go bandying this stuff about the internet without making a lot of preparation to be able to be doing this and sit comfortably in my office chair without thinking that myself and my family are going to be in some form of harm's way. I do realize that there's risks involved. Mm-hmm. However, there are, of course, white hats and certain agreements and relationships that are set up, which I feel pretty confident about. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why I took issue with QAnon, the first one, was that the moment QAnon hadn't been posting, that you see those lols on the chans. And the moment we released Insignia Gate, within probably 15, 20 minutes, QAnon, it made notables, and then QAnon started posting and literally sucking up all the airtime until Insignia Gate started to go away. Then QAnon started to go quiet again. I went, okay, well, maybe coincidence, rah. We then did a secondary release. QAnon had been quiet, not posting for at least a week or two. Mm-hmm. We post again, it starts to get traction, QAnon, boom. Maybe it was just coincidence. Now, then what really irked me was that someone who I have been actively investigating and hunting, and there's a black and white FBI document naming him as one of the biggest drug dealers in the world, George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States, clear, plain as day crimes, and not just that, that's just one of them. Mm-hmm. And we go through this charade of his state funeral. And yes, I know there are envelopes and there could have been things in that and there could have been this, but this is where clearly the President of the United States strategy and mine differ. As far as I'm concerned, if you appear to cooperate with these criminals and you're not actively telling the American people about these crimes that have happened, just like JFK was preparing to, you become complicit in the crime. If, let's say, my next door neighbor rapes a woman and I overhear it, but my next door neighbor is friends with all the bikies, and I might have some friends, but I then don't tell anyone in the neighborhood about the rape, but I'm still actively trying to take on the bikies. And meanwhile, the rape victim doesn't, know who it was. Maybe she died. The victim's family are grieving. And this person is going on to commit more rapes while I'm not saying anything. To me, it's as black and white as that.
Well, I can understand. Continue.
Yeah, look, I love what President Donald Trump has done for the US so far. Don't get me wrong. I really do. And clearly the QAnon viral intel gamification of the internet in intelligence has been pretty incredible. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay? But the way I see it, it's like if there are lies in a relationship, let's say a marriage, and you keep letting these lies brew and brew and brew, and you might bring a bunch of flowers to try and make her happy, it doesn't really solve the problem. Only truth does that. Clear, accountable truth.
I can understand that, but I would counter with the fact that if President Trump was to come out and, day one, announce, you guys, these are all bad people, this is what they've done, and we have to put them away right now, not only would the complete structure of the United States government have collapsed because of the breadth of these crimes and how deep this corruption runs throughout everywhere, he also would have run the risk of immediately being assassinated. Now, they tried to kill him, on quite a few different occasions. I think it's over 12 now. But if he had come out and just broadcast his moves, then that would have allowed all of these bad people to safeguard themselves and, maybe, been able to implement some of those safeguards prior to being arrested or, being able to be punished. By doing it the way he's done it, the way I see it, it has been a slow and calculated one by one takedown. So we've had all of these resignations throughout the government. We've had resignations in industry. And slowly, as he's been able to pull this off, he has been able to put his team and the people that he knows that he can trust, while at the same time maintaining those close relationships with people that we know that he can't trust. And with regard to that Bush funeral, there was a couple of very telling things in that funeral showing that it was not what it was made out to be. President Trump and Melania, they walked out at the end. All right. They just walked out immediately. Also, the flag was not draped on former President Bush's coffin in the proper way. He was not given the proper respect that you would expect for a former head of state being laid to rest. And then, of course, there is those envelopes. There's those envelopes. And I'm sure, I don't know if you saw my video on it. This is one of the first videos I ever made. But when Laura Bush shows Jeb that envelope, he's got his hand over his heart. He's looking at his father's coffin. He sees what's in that envelope, and his face drops. His hand drops to his side, and he looks.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. And I just want to bring up, there's people on this channel, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm a guy who has managed to get this intel and negotiate at this level and tell the Director of Central Intelligence to do one.
Sure.
And here we have people who are saying, this guy's ignorant, get off, time up now. Simply because I've questioned Q, which is what Q himself tells us to do.
I agree.
So there's this blind faith, okay, and that's why you've invited me on.
Yeah.
If I was completely anti-Q and didn't know what I was talking about, clearly I wouldn't be here. So all I'm telling some of these fans who are going, oh, get off the channel now, you've had your time. No, okay. I also have a strategy. Mm-hmm. I've worked at these levels. Okay, now what I know in discussing things at these levels is that Trump's major concern is thermonuclear war with Israel. Is that the Zionist clique who blew up 9/11 will continue to try and do something like that against the US. That's the game Trump is playing right now.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I get that. I really do. The only reason I counter that is because I'm aware that there is, and they say disinformation. Well, check out my drop. Don't just say disinformation, Nez17. Check the drop out. What is the disinformation? Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. If people make comments, there needs to be an actual calculated argument about that, which is the one I'm trying to make against Q. As far as I'm concerned, the big guys, and this is where I differ, people are dying every day. Innocent children are dying.
Yes.
How prepared do we have to be? How prepared can we ever be? And that's where I know that when you go after the money at a level this high, I have watched the most powerful agencies in Australia fall down because of me. Not be able to operate and enforce law because of me. And I'm just a bloody jeweler. This is the President of the United States, and he has an obligation to protect his people. I get he's playing a chess game, but there also has to come a time where these arrests do happen. That's all I'm saying. To me, it's frustrating. And yes, I get that there's thermonuclear war, but we also realize that some of these nuclear weapons have been shut down. And this came from a conversation I had with a wing commander in the UK Air Force. Okay, so some of these nuclear weapons can be shut down. We do have help, and it's about time that we stop allowing this bullshit to go on and we start acting, because Trump is running out of his time to be president.
Yeah. What I think is happening is that he is, well, first of all, we've had a couple of different milestones we had to get past. We had to get past the release of the Mueller report. Now that's come. Now we're going to have the report on Comey in approximately 2 weeks. That's going to take out that piece. And then immediately after that, we're going to have the D-class. And at that point, it will be plainly obvious that these people have committed treason, that there was a coup that was ongoing against the president, and that is going to be what I believe the real beginning for the falling of these dominoes. Because, you also got to remember that if President Trump had just come out and just said, all these people are bad, we're going to round them up, he would have had fully half the country, if not more at that time, that probably would have freaked out and just not believed anything that he said. So now he's got, He's got legitimacy in the eyes of a lot more people. Well, listen, I've had a really good time talking with you, but I do have to let you go because we've got to...
Absolutely, and I concur, and I'm on that statement and quite prepared to ride this out, but we'll be continuing to make sure that these arrests, if they have to happen, and this information comes out now. Because one more life, one more child's life, one more innocent life is one life too many. And we have the intel because you go after their money, you go after these trillions of dollars of accounts, and it shuts down the whole deep state. Thanks very much for having me, Red Pill.
Oh, I agree so much. Thank you so much again for joining me. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Pleasure. Thanks, mate.
Yep. See you, Eliahi. Bye. All right, guys. There we go. That was a pretty interesting conversation. We're going to be calling in, quite frankly, next. See if we might go a little bit long with quite frankly. You know, 1 second. I got to jump to this, and then we'll call Frank. Here we go. Please welcome my next guest, quite frankly. Where are you, buddy? All right, well, apparently Frank is not ready yet, you guys, so we're just gonna... Oh, famous last words. Frank, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear
Okay.
me?
I can hear you. Okay. All right.
I almost missed you. I almost missed you because this Skype is the bane of my existence.
No problem. No problem. Now I'm just trying to get your video to come up on the screen here. Let's see. Why is it not showing?
I called you a video.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's trying to show. Ugh, hold on. I need to make sure it's not going to show me. 1 second. There we go. Okay. It got you. I got you. It came up now. All right. All right. Everyone, please welcome, quite frankly, of the Quite Frankly podcast. How are you, Frank?
Wow. Well, I'm doing all right. I just got to say, man, are you sure you didn't want to talk to Eliahi Priest for another hour? Because I almost feel bad coming on after him.
No, I know there was so much more that we could have spoken about, but
I know. I really feel guilty right now. The audience was loving it. I was like, they're gonna hate me now.
No. That's why this show is twice weekly. You know, I mean, like, and then I've got my regular production shows during the week. But there's plenty of time for everybody to come back on the air. You know, we got to take every little bit at a time.
Well, it's great. It's great to be on with you, man. It really is.
I'm so glad you're here, dude. It's been a long time coming. So, Frank, how was your day?
I'm doing fine. The day was fine. I started it off at a little cousin's first communion, and then I went from there to my grandmother-in-law's 94th birthday party. And then from there, I went home to clean the toilet and to change the Brita filter and to just do all the things I got to do.
Your husbandly duties.
And then, of course, I purged all my inboxes. I wrote down some notes for the shows next week and, just that. But I'm happy to be here with you, man.
Awesome, dude. I'm so glad you're here. Well, we've had a heck of a week for the news, have we not? We had so many things happening. So I wanted to talk about President Trump announced that he is withdrawing the United States from the UN Small Arms Treaty, and he signed it on stage in front of that NRA audience. What did you think of that?
It's fantastic. Listen, anything with UN on it needs to be thrown into the garbage. Wipe your ass with it first, actually.
Exactly.
Seriously, anything with it on it, but especially that. So that's a huge thing here. I know that there's a lot of people are still very worried about Donald Trump and what he may give up or surrender with the guns thing. But I got to really just say, remember, whenever you start feeling down or worried about that stuff, we have already been given the answer. Missouri gave us the answer. They went and they passed that bill. I don't know if the governor signed it into law yet, but just pretty much reasserts their 10th Amendment rights to ignore any unconstitutional law or any kind of federal overreach that does not exist within the enumerated powers. So pretty much, because the Bill of Rights applies to the federal government cannot legislate or limit the access of people to have arms, which means it's a 10th Amendment issue, which means that the states, that's why there's over 20,000 gun laws from coast to coast, because the states can make up their own laws as it pertains or as it relates to their own state constitutions. So Missouri just pretty much said, no, thank you, feds, you can go to hell. And that's the biggest thing here. We need to, depending on where you get your news or any of the conversations you listen to, the podcasts and all that, the one thing it's all coming down to here is that we need decentralization of everything. The media is breaking apart, and that's why it's so much harder to lie than it used to be and control people than it used to be.
Oh yeah, the free flow of information just makes it almost impossible nowadays.
It's amazing, man.
As soon as they tell a lie, next thing you know, everybody's already debunked it. Now, Frank, if I could ask you one thing, just no cursing on the air.
I'll go as far as, is ass too far or damn?
No, you can say ass or damn. That's fine. But just know you know the key ones. No broadcast language. What's really important to me about this is that it's a reaffirmation of American sovereignty. Like you said, anything with the letters U and N on it is only fit to throw in the toilet. So we have had our rights trampled on, globally, and we were at such a close point of ceding the United States to the United Nations and allowing the blue helmets to basically be running around lawlessly on our ground here in America. So this is a very, very good news. And there was a lot of other interesting things that he peppered throughout that speech. I don't know if you caught that, but lots of references to Q, lots of Q-like statements that he made. I thought that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, I've always really just followed the Q stuff with cautious optimism and I've been having a lot of fun following it. At the very least, I always say it's one of my favorite blogs of all time, because there's so much that is gained from it, and I don't care what the hell the stories behind its emergence or anything like that is. It'll always be a net positive to me.
Oh yeah,
always be a net positive to me because look at the engagement, look at the responsibility that it has, and the not only that, the enthusiasm. Who the hell is going to say no to enthusiasm these days?
Oh yeah, and waking people up. That's the big thing. So many people came to the truth movement as a result of this phenomenon. You had record numbers of people asleep, I think, or people that had just given up because of everything that happened during the Obama administration. And, you get to a point, you realize, good Lord, President Trump is saving the country. And now people are starting to wake up. If they didn't come to it through Q, then they came to it through Trump. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all the same thing because they are the same person. Now, here's a very interesting proof that came true the other day. I believe it was January of last year, Q had posted something about 4 outside FBI contractors having access to the data, to spying on American citizens. And Joe DeGenova the other night, I believe it was on Laura Ingraham, he, for the first time, stated publicly that there were 4 FBI contractors that are implicated in this spying ring, which was run by none other than John Brennan, Clowns in America.
Mm-hmm.
So Q said it, and then a year plus later, Joe DeGenova, verifies it on national television.
I wonder if it whittled down to 4 though, because there's something. I might be completely wrong, but I have to go back. I have so many things saved. I have all these different things saved into different folders, so I don't I don't lose track of things if I ever need to reference again. But I seem to remember that when Admiral Rogers shut down what was going on with the 702 queries.
Yeah, with the FISA court.
And the lead up to that, when we saw the report that came back, I believe it was like March 17 or maybe March 16. I think it was March 17 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 17.
And that's where we saw that there was a lot of these private contractors that were pretty they had carte blanche as far as going in and being able to pull up whatever the hell they wanted.
Oh yeah, they were spying on women and stuff like that.
I think that it was more like 78. Why did I think it was?
Well, there was definitely a large group of people that should not have had access to this information, but specifically, four in particular were part of the operation being run by John Brennan. Now, what they were doing was they were stealing this information, the spying information on Americans, and they were using it specifically to blackmail and pigeonhole Republicans. That was the operation, and that's what Q was talking about, and then that's what Joe DeGeneva clued us in on. Now, what about this? What about former Pence aide Josh Pitcock? He was implicated in text messages between Strzok and Page, saying that he and his wife were spies for Strzok and Page for the investigation against President Trump. He made a statement. We're going to go ahead and look at this real quick. He said. My wife and I have served our nation in different capacities for more than a decade. I worked for Mike Pence, and she continues to work for the FBI. In the summer of 2016, Mike Pence was picked by Donald Trump to be his vice presidential nominee. Up until that time, my wife had been working on the FBI counterintelligence investigation of Hillary Clinton's email server, the mid-year investigation, as it were. However, when Mike Pence was chosen as the VP nominee, her recusal continued after the campaign ended, though the transition and during the administration, and she was not a part of any counterintelligence division activities having to deal with Russia or the president. With regard to the reference in the text between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page about Katie's husband, to be very clear, I have no knowledge of what Strzok and Page were discussing or why. I had no contact with either Strzok or Page during the 2016 campaign, the transition, or while serving in the White House. I took zero actions on their behalf. There was no infiltration through me or my wife. Any assertions or speculation to the contrary is unfounded, uninformed, and 100% false. During the entire time I worked for President Trump, Vice President Pence, and their administration, I was 100% loyal, dedicated, and determined every day to do my best to advance their agenda. My wife is a dedicated professional who loves the Bureau and her country. That she has been named publicly and subjected to scrutiny and false allegations when she did nothing wrong is unconscionable. Now, I think that no matter what, he has to come out and say this. He has to explicitly deny that he was any part in this, because as soon as he comes out and admits it, he's done. They're both done.
Oh, here's the reason why. Then the private correspondence where you can actually see the true colors. You can see all of this going on. You see the dates. You can put together a cogent timeline. It fits into place. All we need is for everybody to agree we're looking at the same thing here, because it seems to be, to me, that there's so many people that are just denying reality. You can say it's cognitive dissonance. You can call it whatever the hell it is. I don't know. But what I am going to say is this kind of stuff that we're looking at here, and this relationships that they have, and the incestuous nature of this entire department, it really is a stunning thing. But it's not going to be. That's also going to be the undoing of anybody who comes out and uses the excuse that this was being done for national security purposes or out of patriotic duty, because at this point, this is the only place to run. Yeah. They can't. Why do you think Hillary Clinton is sitting on stage right now and saying things like, well, all these things are out there and he doesn't get indicted? Anybody else would have been gotten indicted. No. When his report said little to nothing, right. And her report had verified crimes on there, and they let her go. Yeah, people have gone to prison for far less than what Hillary Clinton did, and she's lucky to be walking the streets at this point. Yeah, but the act is. But what I really wanted to get to is the act right there that they're putting on now, the cool, calm demeanor, the confidence and all that. It's the only thing they have left. So they're going to play it. They're going to play it. Well, why do you think that didn't they just launch another investigation, only this time into Stephen Miller? Because we're talking about that later. Maybe I'll move it up. No, go where you want to go. No, that's fine. But yeah, no, it's a good point. And actually, we can go ahead and bring Stephen Miller up here to the front. Let's see. So yeah, that's the next thing that the Democrats are going to. They've essentially exhausted all of their investigatory capacity around Trump and anybody else that they've spoken about. So, Stephen Miller's been kind of held out there as this, white supremacist this whole time.
people saying nasty things about Stephen Miller, but I think Stephen Miller's a good guy. And, again, this is an investigation that's going to lead nowhere. This is coming from, the Department of Homeland Security. No, I'm sorry. We're investigating President Trump's recent unprecedented actions to remove much of the senior leadership of the Department of Homeland Security. This is from Elijah Cummings, of course. And, of course,
swollen newborn baby face.
So we're deeply concerned that the firing and forced resignation of these officials puts at risk the security of the American people. I have to disagree with that entirely. This is designed to increase the security of the American people. Yep. And this is a perfect time to bring up that story about the U.S. Border Patrol because this is the Border Patrol chief. He's saying that, there's outdated laws and lack of consequences for border chaos. And he's right. The president, has to work within the framework and the DHS have to work within the framework of the laws that we have in place. And this is one of the criticisms that Kirstjen Nielsen had, saying that Trump wanted her to do more, but then saying that she was doing everything that she could within, her scope of power and probably all the resources that they had. Already this year, we've surpassed, greater number than all of the illegals that crossed the border in the entire year last year. So you've got to believe that the Border Patrol has got to be extremely overtaxed at this point. And we need to change the laws. We need tough people in place in there so that they can implement the ideas and the plans of the president. But we've got major work that we've got to do on a congressional level because these laws are out of control.
Oh yeah, yeah. And when I saw that figure of 100,000 people last month.
Oh, plus,
So, and I have never ever been a fan of the idea of mass deportation. I never would have thought, because I thought it was a waste of time. There's so much more that can be done. And if you fix the welfare state, everybody likes talking about the military-industrial complex. We've got a welfare-industrial complex that's much bigger than the military one, at least the military budget that's on the books. I mean, I'm sure there's something much bigger than the welfare as far as spending goes in black money, but that is just this is the thing that's going on here. You fix that, people are going to self-deport. If you fix that, people are going to self-deport. And then you want to know who will be left over. The people you always wanted to be here in the first place, whether they got here illegally or not, because they're the ones who are going to be able to have gotten it done, sink or swim on their own, which is what this country was always supposed to be about, regardless of where in the world you came from. But the immigration scheme has always just been about numbers. It's never been about quality. It's been about numbers so that they can overwhelm an electorate. And when you try to call them out on what they're doing, they use your human compassion against you, and they use racism and phobia and isms and against you. And that's the only thing. That they do not care about the people that are coming over and who are going to get shafted. In fact, they want people to be deported so they'll have headlines.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we have to fix the broken incentives that we give people to come here illegally. You come here, they immediately start getting a check. They immediately start getting food stamps. They immediately have health care. We've got so many people, citizens of this country, that are suffering. Imagine all of the money that we pour into, like paying immigrants, paying these illegals, the programs that are necessary in order to support them and move them around the country. Not to mention the fact that it's overwhelming the communities where these people are pouring in, and the crime, everything that goes along with it. Yeah, but we've got to take away the incentives for these people to come here illegally.
I'm with you.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen as long as we've got any of these people in power that are still in Congress. Now, the next story I wanted to talk about was John Brennan. John Brennan had, another outburst with regard to President Trump. He said that President Trump had some sociopathic ramblings. I think John Brennan's a sociopath, if you ask me. But he blasted President Trump on Friday and denied that he participated in a coup to unseat the president. That was incredible. Actually, he's got to go on the defensive and actually deny, I'm not part of a coup. It's not a coup. So Brennan responded to a clip of Trump's Thursday night interview with Sean Hannity, which was incredible, where the president accurately called out the efforts of Brennan, McCabe, Comey, and the others to unseat him, a coup. I really say now we have to get down, because this was a coup. This was an attempted overthrow of the United States government, Trump said to Hannity. These are sick people. These are sick people. Again, these people are sick. So let's see what happens with McCabe and Comey and Brennan and Clapper. They were in on the act. Let's see what happens, and let's see how high it goes up, because he knows it goes all the way up to the executive level. It went all the way up to Obama. He even suggested that Obama was in on the coup, and that there were even people a lot higher up in the Obama administration too. So Brennan didn't take it well. He said, well, I don't think it's surprising at all that we continue to hear the sociopathic ramblings of Mr. Trump, claiming that there was this effort to try to prevent him from being elected or to unseat him. If you have eyes, then you know that that's true. You know, I mean, there was an effort.
This is ridiculous. This was all on the up and up.
Right.
Damn it.
Give me a break, Brennan. So he also took a shot at Senator Rand Paul for a tweet he posted last month, revealing that Brennan insisted on including Hillary's phony dossier in the IC report. A high-level source tells me it was Brennan who insisted that the unverified and fake Steele dossier be included in the intelligence report. Brennan should be asked to testify under oath in Congress ASAP. Now, you know, I think Brennan should be held accountable, but I don't know what having him testify under oath is going to do. He's had no problem lying up to this point.
Yeah, but the thing is that if they already have things, they already have conducted other interviews. So if they already have what they want, they're either going to get a conflict, or they're going to get a corroboration, or they're going to get a confession.
Yeah.
At that point, because once you've been called and you're under oath, then at that point you got to pick your poison. And I think a few people are going to pick poison soon, if you ask me.
No, I agree. Suicide weekend. It's going to happen because these people are looking at prison for the rest of their lives at the best. Okay, definitely I think some people are going to be executed because this was straight up high treason. Let's take a listen to Brennan on MSNBC Conspiracy.
Oh yes,
News.
I haven't heard this. Let's do it.
President has been talkative lately, including on Hannity overnight. Sean Hannity over on Fox News, his first sort of interview, if you will, in depth since we've seen some of these developments from the Mueller report, and he invoked your name. And I want to play what he had to say.
I really say now we have to get down because this was a coup. This was an attempted overthrow.
Oh, yeah, you can't hear it?
No, I can't hear it. No, you're just sitting in silence.
Sorry.
Sick people. So let's see what happens with McCabe and Comey and Brennan and Clapper. They were in the act. And let's see what happens, and let's see how high it goes up, because it's inconceivable when it goes to Clapper, Brennan, Comey, these people. I would imagine that some other people, maybe a little bit higher up, also knew about it, and maybe a lot higher up.
So
that's too bad. Too bad we can't get music licenses on
the act for some kind of an attempted overthrow. How do you respond?
On YouTube? Are you playing it?
Well, I don't think it's surprising.
No, I don't hear it, dude.
Yeah, the audience can hear it. Sorry about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry. So, hold on. I'm just going to finish this section of it, and then I'll come back to you.
That we continue to hear the sociopathic ramblings of Mr. Trump.
That's it. I just wanted to hear him say sociopathic ramblings. I don't know why the audio is not coming into you. Sorry about that, Frank.
Well, no, I'm sorry that I ruined the clip twice.
You're okay. So, I mean, we get the idea, though. It's in the story that I sent over to you. But, obviously, Brennan is very nervous about this. I feel that he understands that it's getting closer and closer and closer. Every day, we see another piece coming out about this. And it's not only to seed the information into the American public and allow them to see, geez, this really did happen. But it shows the deep state. It shows people like Brennan that, Trump has everything. They have absolutely every piece of information.
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up too, when it pertains to this, first of all, Brennan's just hilarious. It's just hilarious at this point. Like I said, it's all about public perception. That's why they're all either hawking books at this point, or James Comey is posting pictures of him staring at the sea, like he's thinking about the great beyond, and like, oh wow, they're just such great people. They love their country. His book is called A Higher Loyalty or something like that. Who cares? So all their books are going to have the word loyalty in it, and we're going to rethink our positions on whether or not they committed treason. But the best thing about all this was, and you brought up Q before, because I still check in, like I say, every couple of days, and one thing was sent to me, a screenshot was sent to me by a buddy of mine today, the reference to this, the name that's going to become a household name soon. And that is Mr.
I've got
Hannigan.
it right here. Got it right here.
Mr. Robert Hannigan.
Robert Hannigan, yes.
Thursday night, I brought it up. I said, now that we were talking about Mike Rogers again, now that we're talking about Mike Rogers and what was going on with FISA and actually seeing all the things that were going on, how the FBI was being used to not only try to affect this election in 2016, but years beforehand, which we'll talk about that in a second. I think it bears bringing up. But that whole thing right there, Robert Hannigan is the key because not a key, but an interesting part of the story, because his quitting after the election, that's when we start piecing everything together, why he came to the United States, why he met directly with Brennan. He was working directly with Brennan on this why that is suspicious is because his American counterpart is Mike Rogers. Hannigan is the head of the GCHQ, which is pretty much the British NSA.
Yep.
So the fact that he was going around Rogers, and it makes so much sense now why the Obama administration seemed to want Rogers and Flynn out badly. They knew Flynn had big ideas about restructuring the intelligence community and the way it's doing things. He knew where all the bodies were buried. He knew how inefficient and how corrupt it all was. So they did not want their gravy train getting cut off, and they also knew that Mike Rogers was a man of integrity they could not buy out. It's really interesting to see all these names pop up because Hannigan and Brennan and Rogers, that's all in the same thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and Hannigan just quit unexpectedly in 2017. Of course, at the time he said that it was due to his family, his wife was ill or something like that. But I think it's pretty obvious that as head of GCHQ, he was part of the Five Eyes operation that was running this counterintelligence operation against the president. And you're right, he should have been meeting with Mike Rogers. But Mike Rogers was the good guy, I mean, I speculated the other night on the show that perhaps Mike Rogers could actually be on Q Team, if not, one of the main people that's posting right now.
Yeah, anything can be possible. The one thing that brought that up when I was listening to Joe DeGeneva talking about how far back they were able to trace this spying operation, it made complete sense that at least this one plot, this one operation went back to at least 2012, because what else were we talking about with the election year of 2012, and what other department within the executive branch was using to stifle the groundswell that was the Tea Party and how they were able to grow. They were using the IRS and the FBI like the left and right fists of this overbearing, and then they were also making money through the DOJ slush funds. They were making it because they can't raise money anymore. They're in the business of making people poor. So they raise money through these foreign donors. We know how prolific the Clintons are with raising money and selling influence and selling ambassadorships. So they had the money coming in. They have the IRS and the DOJ keeping the boot to their competition's throats. They were in. Think about the hulking monster, the behemoth that is. That is a scary amount of power.
Yeah, the entirety of the power of the American government under the hand of one evil person like Barack Obama can crush an entire movement like the Tea Party. We saw that, and now we've got actual movement happening on that. I mean, it's come out recently that President Trump is doing something about going back and retroactively checking out the IRS as a result of looking into the Tea Party. So I believe it. I believe that this operation could have started as early as then. I think that this was a cornerstone of Obama's game plan. He was using his own private boutique spying thing, to go after people that he wanted to crush and people that he wanted to control.
Yeah, and if you think about also, and why did they have to put all this in? Because it was the last play that they had, and they needed to push the ball across the finish line. And the other thing here is when you think about what was going to be coming up, he was trying to pass the baton to Hillary.
Yes.
And at that point, you have somebody who wants free speech destroyed. I mean, talk radio, even though it had to evolve anyway, talk radio would have died. Citizens United, she would have had at least 3 picks for the Supreme Court. Okay,
Yep.
Citizens United would have died. They would have been able to censor anything. And not only that, but once they kept all of the thing, Donald Trump sparked something in people that continues to grow, which is a little bit more of a willingness to go head to head with who is controlling the narrative and the culture,
Yes.
and also just to be a little bit more proud of themselves. And that's not a dog whistle for white supremacy.
No.
I'm talking about just proud of being Americans again, because we were told, hey, listen, for years, it doesn't matter what color you were. This country was never a very good country,
Yes,
and we have a lot to atone for. All that stuff changed, man, and I think that's the best part about all of this.
I would have to agree. Yeah, the pride in being an American, to have the the freedom to be able to say, like, I am an American, and we've done amazing things. If you go and look at any country or any ruling party throughout the history of the world, war, horrible things, subjugation of other people, it's happened everywhere. America does not have the monopoly on suffering, but we do have the monopoly on Western culture. Western culture is amazing. If it was not for people like us, then the entire world would be a very, very different place, and we might still be living in, stone huts.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, our next door neighbor, Bill de Blasio over here, wants that to happen in New York. He's 20 miles away right now, talking about how future skyscrapers in New York City should try to abandon steel and glass.
What are they going to use?
Like I said, it's going to be mud hut skyscrapers. People are going to come to New York to see the mud huts.
Adobe.
Oh my God! The Native Americans that were on Manhattan Island weren't even living in mud huts.
No. I got a couple of super chats I have to say thank you for. Stephen Gilchrist gave a couple super chats. Thank you. Tanette Booth, thank you very much. Also, Mighty Dragon, very prolific with the super chats tonight. He said, quite frankly, rules.
Yeah, Mighty Dragoon.
My Red Pill 78 rules. Let's see. Upgrade your app or browser. Get 5G. No way. Not going to get 5G. Jeff Stewart, lock her up. Freight Train, great seeing Frank on your show tonight, Red Pill. I'm glad that Frank's here. And then Mighty Dragon calls back to a story that I spoke about earlier, the magnetic field disruptor technology of the TR-3B Project Astra. Did you happen to catch that, Frank? The Navy released the fact that they have a patent on gravity wave inducing technology, which allows them to reduce the mass of any craft by 89%, and then they can build a slipstream of space-time around whatever it is so that they can go 10,000 kilometers an hour in any direction that they want to.
Jeez, no, I didn't. I didn't see this. Well, I was reading some. I was halfway through an article by The Drive called "What the Hell is Going On with UFOs in the Department of Defense?" Is it mentioned in there at all?
I didn't see it in that particular article. The one that I saw was a Metro UK article.
I'm telling you, everything's soft. Everything is soft disclosure right now.
Definitely.
And I don't know. Does it make you excited or worried?
Oh no, it makes me absolutely excited. I think that this is, it's the, like you said, it's the soft disclosure. This is going to be the first official fleet vehicle for the Space Force, in my opinion.
And this is exactly why the Space Force had to come out, and they asked for some the first when I heard them ask, they would have made it a lot more believable if they said we need $20 billion for Space Force. Mm-hmm. But the fact they came out and asked for 8, I was like, oh, then this is just a coming out party. Then they already had the Space Force ready to go.
Yes, they did.
Because $8 billion, get out of here.
It's nothing. It's nothing. All right, so moving on to the next story. Remember that Joseph Mifsud, the mysterious Maltese professor that was at one time framed as a Russian agent who had met with George Papadopoulos. He'd been missing. He's been missing for a long time. Well, it turns out that he was living next to the American consulate in Italy the whole time, like right next door. So apparently President Trump called the Italian prime minister once this hit the news, which I thought was hilarious. So Maltese professor Joseph Mifsud was used to tie George Papadopoulos to Russia by the Mueller team in their mainstream media. After he was interviewed by Mueller, he went missing. 2 days ago, he was finally located in Rome, right next door to the U.S. Embassy. Now, President Trump apparently called the prime minister of Italy because that's a pretty big deal. You've got somebody that tried to frame, one of your staffers, and then the guy actually spent some time in prison. Not long, maybe 2 weeks, but We've also had another major shift in a country that was implicated in helping Hillary and the Obama administration, Ukraine. Ukraine has a new president now. So I think we're going to see some major movement on the investigation into the people that helped Hillary and the Obama FBI and DOJ attempt to frame President Trump.
I got to pay a little bit more attention to the Ukraine side of this. There's so many little fins and appendages to the story. It's very that's the one that I'm least knowledgeable on. Although I have been paying somewhat attention to this election that just wrapped up out there, because it was framed to me what the outrageous circumstances of it all was. The Canadian, and he, with crushing majority he won, and all that, and how significant the victory was, or the comedian.
Yes, the comedian, yeah.
I said the Canadian?
Yeah, you said Canadian. I was like, what did I miss?
Sorry. We've been picking up on Canadians lately. It hasn't been right. But yeah, it's interesting, especially since I see how people like yourself and a few other friends of mine, they have been piecing together big-time timelines with Ukraine, and asking questions about Joe Biden out there.
Oh, yeah, and his son. Yeah. So it actually there was a Ukrainian parliamentarian who was caught on tape admitting to the fact that he specifically helped the Obama administration attempt to put Hillary Clinton into the office of the president by colluding with her and her campaign. He's the one who passed the information on Manafort over, the reason that Manafort is now in prison. It is so deep. It goes deep and wide. And Joe Biden actually had Joe Biden went over and he intervened on behalf of his son in the investigation of his company and asked Poroshenko, I believe, the former Ukrainian president, to fire what the equivalent of their attorney general, because the guy was looking into Joe Biden's son and this company and their ties to Russia and to China. So got rid of him, and then in one fell swoop, they also got all this information to attempt to implicate President Trump and his people in this fake Russian collusion narrative.
Yeah, and there's little things they can do at this point as far as trying to piece this one together. It's like you ever see the movie Death Becomes Her?
Oh yes, definitely. Love that movie.
Okay. Well, this is like toward the end where Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn can't keep it together anymore, and finally they just fall on the church steps and shatter.
Yep.
Yeah. There's no putting Humpty Dumpty back together this time. But no. It's interesting. So I'm going to be following the lead of people like you and others with the Ukraine thing, because I know that's heating up, and circumstances have changed. So. Oh,
definitely. Yeah, I'll be all over it. And now with all of this, Russian collusion narrative just falling apart, much like Death Becomes Her. Michael Isikoff, I believe the first, mainstream media journalist to bring the Steele dossier to the forefront, he's now admitting that he's skeptical about the Steele dossier. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of, what was it? Not Carl Bernstein, but the other one, Bob Woodward, coming out and saying that, the clowns in America need to be investigated for bringing the Steele dossier to the table and saying that it was legit when obviously it wasn't legit. I've always considered Bob Woodward to probably be a Mockingbird agent for the clowns in America. So to hear him coming out and saying this, and now Michael Isikoff is coming out and saying it as well. I guess maybe the Steele dossier was fake. Well, a little too late, Mike. A little too late. You're the one who brought this out here, and you pushed it on everybody, and you said that it was true. I believe that Michael Isikoff actually was in direct contact with Christopher Steele.
Yeah.
So you would think that they're all trying to save their own butts. That's the point.
That and Yahoo News, that's the way that they corroborated. That's the way that they actually substantiated all this stuff and gave it credibility. So Isikoff, David Korn, he was another one that was writing Mother Jones.
I think they wrote a book together, actually.
Yeah. But I know Korn pops up somewhere along here. You just said it there too. There was something else I wanted to bring up. Oh, it was on this though. What the hell was it? Damn it. Whatever. No, it was good though too. It was really good.
Well, it'll come back to you. So, it was definitely Isikoff. It was Isikoff's Yahoo report. That was how they corroborated the Steele dossier. So, it's just incredible to see this falling apart, piece by piece. The House is crumbling. They are no longer going to be able to use this, and they're holding on to anything they can. I believe that someone in the chat earlier today said that Adam Schiff is now backtracking on his claims. We've got that story coming up a little bit. Maybe I'll bring that up to the front right now. So Adam Schiff showed up on Bill Maher. And Bill Maher took him to task, which I thought was pretty funny too. Democrat lawmaker and anti-Trumper Adam Schiff went on with Bill Maher on Friday night after the release of the Mueller report in the last 2 weeks. Shifty Schiff, who previously said he had evidence on Trump colluding with Russia. Remember, Adam Schiff was out there. He was constantly saying there is a there. They went on to discuss the findings. Schiff told Maher that the report concluded the Russians were engaged in a systemic effort to interfere in our election, and that the Trump campaign welcomed it, embraced it, built it into their plan, made full use of it, lied about it, covered it up, and then obstructed the investigation into it. All lies.
Wow.
Of course, the Mueller report.
They did so much.
Of course, the Mueller report said the exact opposite. That Trump and his transition team did not collude with the Russians. They didn't obstruct justice. There was no crimes to obstruct. Now, even Bill Maher got tired of Schiff's lies, telling him, but this was our big gun, and now it looks like you're stalking him.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That it's even obvious to Bill Maher. Now, obviously, Bill Maher is probably it pains him to admit it. He probably wanted it to be true so that he could find a way. This is the guy that said that he would actually hold on. What are you going to do? This is the guy who said he would like to see the economy come down just so that Trump wouldn't be able to run on re-election with a strong economy.
Sick.
It doesn't look like it's going to be able to do that. I know that the currency hasn't got much better, but it's interesting to watch them have to sit there. And yeah, Schiff is another one. Going real quick with the whole Mockingbird thing there too. Remember, it was also the CIA, and one of the first projects of Operation Mockingbird was to help talk about or destroy or muddy all of the conversation about the JFK assassination.
Yep.
They were making behind documentaries that actually promoted some of the early truth movements on JFK. So it's like you hedge your bets both ways so you can control everything and make sure that there's a good amount of confusion that flushes and negates both sides. And
exactly.
That's what so that's probably what the press is doing. It's definitely what people like Schiff are going to try to do. They'll at the end they're going to try to use the patriotic duty excuse.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I think that none of it's going to work because at this point they've lost absolutely all credibility in the eyes of basically everyone. And of course, more big news. Joe Biden announced he's running this week. I sure hope that when it comes down to it, it's Joe Biden against President Trump, because the left is already turning on him. Okay.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, because you've got this fractured Democratic Party. Real quick, Bush 63 Master says Mark Taylor prophesied that the DNC deep state would spend themselves out of existence. I think that's pretty much what's happening. They spent all their ammunition. They don't have anything, no legs left to stand on. But so you've got these different wings of the Democratic Party. You've got like the moderate centrist Democratic Party, which I would say, Joe Biden is a part of. He's not a progressive, activist or anything like that. And then you've got like the Antifa progressive activist wing, getting handsy, of the Democratic Party, who won't vote for you unless you're like, a woman of color. They don't want to vote for Joe Biden. They don't want to vote for, maybe Pete Buttigieg because he's a homosexual.
Is that how you say his last name?
Buttigieg.
I didn't even care to learn.
I only know it from listening to other talking heads say it. But so Joe Biden launches his campaign this week, and his campaign is basically built on making America great again, except that he says it in a bit of a different way. He says we're gonna bring America back like it used to be. Doesn't that sound like Make America Great Again?
Yeah, back like it used to be. Right. All right, so what are you saying? You want to go back to when it was bad or good? Yeah. If you want to go back to it as good, then you're going to make it good again? Or are you just going to settle for good? Or do you want to make it great again? Make America wonderful again.
Make America decent again. Somebody said, "Make America straight again" was his line. Biden Wilmington says America's coming back like we used to be. So make America straight again, someone asks. But he was pilloried. He was pilloried on Twitter because people just, nobody is taking Joe Biden seriously at this point. I think that the things that came out about him, laying hands on that Hispanic candidate in Nevada, that woman who's very tight with the Obamas. I don't think that former President Obama wants Joe Biden in office there. Because as much of as a yes man as he is, I think that he would be a bit of a loose cannon, and I think that he has absolutely no absolute way that he could possibly beat President Trump. That's why I want to see Joe Biden. President Trump is going to roast him on that debate stage if that comes down to it.
Who do you think is the most? Who do you think is the most dangerous? Is it still Bernie?
Yeah, I would say Bernie. But I don't think that Bernie has a chance either.
No, and I'll tell you. You let me know if this pleases your logic. But the reason why I agree with you is because, and I've said it before, that 2016 now that it's all hindsight, Heine height. Now that it's all in Heine sight, which I'm going to start using. Now that it's all behind us, we can almost be grateful that Hillary embarked on such a foolish operation.
Fool's errand, yeah.
Because she went out there, because it's not only just the fixing and the fusion GPS and the dossier, but also think about this. She actually thought the Pied Piper candidacy route to try to make Trump more popular because she thought he would be the easiest to beat. Oh, she went wrong everywhere. Because of that, and because she had the super delegates locked up and Bernie was not able to do anything, the other thing is there too. Bernie's complicit. Donna Brazile told him. He didn't say a damn word, and he shut his mouth for 4 years. And now here he is, and he's looking for the nomination of the party that screwed him and the people who gave him $200 million out of their college savings funds, so that he can go and spend it, knowing it was a doomed campaign. That is ridiculous. But the other thing here too is not only does he have that hanging over his head that he screwed people like that, but also, we now know Donald Trump as a known entity. He wasn't a known entity now. Now that he was given a chance, and people saw that not only was he completely headhunted for 2 years for absolutely no reason, he still got a lot of good stuff done in those years.
Yes.
And the fact that he had a successful presidency, and the fact that Bernie was just sat there by the wayside, I think that Bernie had the best chance in 2016. Hillary actually saved us because Bernie could have beaten him in 2016, I think.
I think that you have a fair point there. Yeah, Bernie has completely destroyed any shred of credibility that he would have had that he threw away back in 2016. And, now that people do understand that Donald Trump is exactly who he said he is, he has done exactly what he said he would do and more. That quantity, knowing that he is legitimate and Bernie is just another, stooge for the party. He stepped aside, so that Hillary could be there because they told him that Hillary was the one who had the chance and that he didn't have the chance when it was completely the other way around. There are no other candidates that even come close. Now, Bernie is going to have the same problem that Joe Biden has because Bernie is a white male.
I know. Okay? I mean, we got to get rid of these white guys. What the hell?
I know. This is the white man's world, as Joe Biden would say.
Jeez.
Now, Biden also had another hilarious comment to make this week about he and Barack's administration. He said there was not one single whisper of scandal during the Obama administration.
Not a smidgen.
Fast and Furious? Nothing. No, never heard of that. There was
not a smidgen. After the IRS, that's where the whole that whole line comes from. After the IRS scandal, there was not a smidgen of corruption, he said.
Gosh, completely ignorant. I don't know if Joe Biden's stupid or if he's just thinking that the people are stupid. But there were so many different scandals during the Obama administration. There was the Inspector General was attempting to look into so many things. And we know Sally Yates wrote that long dissertation about why the Inspector General was not allowed to have any oversight over the DOJ. And the whole reason she did that was because they had this operation going, this counterintelligence operation going long before the Trump administration came in. But besides that, there are so many different instances of abuse of power under the Obama administration and plenty of scandals. Eric Holder was the first attorney general in the history of our country who refused to testify before Congress. Why would that be?
Yeah, Fast and Furious. He was the first one held in contempt.
Yep.
You had the VA scandal that got a lot there, where they had the secret list of the VA. Let's not forget that Obamacare, not only was the rollout bungled, but we have what's his name? We have Jonathan Gruber on tape telling people they sold it relying on the stupidity of the American voter. He lied on all that stuff. Forget about the Obamacare failures and all that. Remember Solyndra? Over $500 million in loans guaranteed by U.S. taxpayers.
They
went to a solar company in California that failed, gone.
Yep.
I mean, hostages. It goes on and on. I actually have a very great list that has been compiled at my home.
I would love to see it, and not to mention the billions and billions and billions of dollars in pallets of cash that they just shipped over to Iran for absolutely no good reason. Other than to make it so that it couldn't be tracked.
Oh, Benghazi. What are we talking about? How do we miss that?
It was going to come up. I was just waiting for it.
Oh, man.
All right. So we also have a list here of the many times that Obama spied on candidate and then President Trump and numerous others. So remember back in March of 2017 when Donald Trump came out with that infamous tweet, "Terrible, just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism." He was right at the time. Okay, he's been shown to be right. But you've still got a large portion of the American population who will point to stuff like this and say Donald Trump's dangerous. Donald Trump says things that aren't true. The president, in my opinion, and I would think that you would agree with me, has not said a single thing that has not become born to be true. Everything that the president says is based in fact, all right? And the reason that people don't get it is because he's saying it before it's actually come out.
Almost like he likes to prime people a little bit.
Yeah.
And playing games. But here's the thing. I mean, it's hard to say this because it sounds like a cop out. But you need to learn his language.
Oh yeah. Learn the comms.
Yeah, you got to learn his language because there's a lot of things there. It's a lot of sleight of hand. He has come into this job with a certain type of specialized training that no president has had before. And that was a specialized training of being able to build ratings and attract attention wherever the hell he goes and maintain it. On with the Apprentice for 12 seasons. Before that, all over the place. Wherever there was a camera, there's Donald Trump building and selling something. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. If you are in the game, then you're going to have to take losses. Mm-hmm. But he knows how to do it. So he's maintained a pretty interesting thing, interesting level of control.
Yep. Oh, and David Munyon just reminded us Uranium One. That was another big one. Yeah, President Trump, he's not only a genius in business, but, I would say that he's a brilliant tactician, military strategist. He went to a military academy, when he was younger. I don't know if it was West Point or if it was someplace else, but, he has a very unique skill set that no other candidate or, president up until this point has had. He's existed among all of these swamp creatures for his entire life without actually becoming one. There was a story that I read the other day that someone speculated. Actually, it was a thread that I read. Someone speculated that he had been primed and prepared for this since birth, because his entire family, they were wealthy upstarts. They came from Scotland, and then they came and they inserted themselves into the New York money scene, and then his father got rich on real estate, and and he basically rolled over as many people as he could in the course of doing business, because that's just part of doing business. He's an excellent negotiator, but you're right, he was building his brand this entire time. And, he had all those dalliances with, maybe I'm going to run for president. He was talking about it as early as 1980. People wanted him to run for president, but the time wasn't right. He had to wait until it was absolutely necessary. So I think it's possible he was primed for this from the time that he was very, very young.
Imagine that. I know that my buddy Matt will like that I'm bringing this up right now, but I have read a couple of really awesome. These types of threads are great to listen to, read at night, but the ones about his family and Tesla.
Oh yeah, I just talked about that. Yeah,
dude, I would love for something to. That's what people ask me. If you ever sit down with Donald Trump and you have like 5 minutes, what would you do? Say, well, what do I do really in 5 minutes? I can't have a talk to him about the Constitution, and just ask certain things that are bothering me. I need to ask something outrageous.
Yeah,
I need to ask something outrageous. I have to say. Do you have time travel technology?
Right, exactly.
Or I can say that there is a rumor on the internet that the night that you won the nomination, a lightning struck Trump Tower, and people said that was the time machine that was activated again, and something had happened. Is this true? Just tell me. It's
incredible. Yeah, I would definitely ask about his uncle and Tesla's papers, but yeah, we may be talking about the same thread where it talks about that Van de Graaff was his uncle's business partner, and like there was all of these ties between Tesla and Trump. We've only got a couple minutes left, but I did want to talk about this from the Clover Chronicle. NBC News was caught doctoring a stock photo of a doctor holding a baby to make it look like a baby that had contracted measles and then died. Not only NBC, but also a newspaper in Israel also used the exact same photo, saying that there was babies that were contracting measles, and this is a great time to get vaccinated. Thank you, Merck. But this is just incredible propaganda here. I've got the picture on screen right now, and you can see clearly here is the picture from NBC where they say that a baby got measles, and then just below it is the photo that you can purchase yourself from iStock Photo, and they've even laid it into a photo with a background in a hospital. But this is just shameless. I can't even believe it.
I can.
I can, but I'm still outraged.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, wow. I saw this a little bit. I came across this the other day, and I didn't know that it was an international type of a ploy.
Yeah,
it popped up in other countries too. But yeah, what do you feel about the measles shot comment by Trump? What do you feel about it?
I didn't even hear it. What did he say?
Well, they were asking him about, well, first of all, right now they're flooding all the headlines are flooded with measles outbreak, this and that, and anti-vaxxer parents, and bans and fines. And he was asked about it in front of Marine One or whatever the hell it is, his helicopter.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, it's terrible. Something to the effect of, it's terrible. Get your shots. You need he made pretty much two quick comments about, go out and get your shots. It's important you get your shots.
Well, I think that there are other shots you can get that aren't vaccines. I mean, he didn't come out and specifically say vaccines. I've heard rumors that Barron might be vaccine injured. So I don't know. I don't know how the president feels about it. I personally know from reading government publications on the efficacy of the measles vaccine, if you get the measles vaccine, there's still like a 90 to 99% chance that you can still contract the measles vaccine from either someone who has been unvaccinated or someone who is vaccinated. I think that it's a sham. All right. I think that, the things inside vaccines notwithstanding, the science behind vaccines is bad. And I think you'd be a lot better off if you just got the measles. But what we could do about it is we could stop allowing all of these immigrants to come into the country illegally, coming from countries where measles is rampant. And I would think that it might be probably pretty practical to think that they are seeding this stuff into these people that are coming up here so that they can sow all this fear among people here in America. Well, we've got time for one more story. This is also from the Clover Chronicle. Apparently an insider from within the government has reached out and said that the redacted portions of Robert Mueller's report are much more interesting than you think. They claim to be an insider on the Russian collusion investigation, and they posted several very strange messages that described what is allegedly contained within certain redacted portions of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. Now, I had hypothesized that it could either be information about the ongoing case against Julian Assange, or perhaps it could be related to other people from the Obama administration that were caught up in the illegal activities they were doing. So they started off by saying, as you may have noticed, there are many redacted portions found throughout Mueller's Russian interference report that was released a few days ago. Attorney General William Barr and his team, I am not sure of the specifics, sifted through the document and blacked out many things that might harm ongoing matters. Sure, some of the items that were redacted would harm sensitive ongoing investigations or reveal personal information. Other redactions, though, are just outright strange. Let me explain. You see, early on in the investigation, Mueller found out that there was absolutely no collusion between President Trump, his 2016 campaign, or anyone else affiliated with it and the Russian government. There was zero proof of collusion. Nothing. The thing is, Mueller was so pressured by certain notable politicians, and you can likely guess their names, as well as high-profile and very influential executives from mainstream media corporations to find anything, and when I mean anything, that would link Trump to Russia. Mueller was a decorated Vietnam veteran who had served his country in many other capacities. He was a man of integrity, but as you'll soon learn, he eventually buckled in the end. Upon reporting his initial non-findings when it came to the Russian collusion, the political and mainstream news media hacks were furious. They demanded he continued to search for evidence even if it took years, so that's what he did. The second volume of the report basically reads as a Wikipedia entry. It has a ton of information and citations, but if you look very closely, those citations come from very unorthodox sources when it comes to a federal investigation of this magnitude. They're not just grand jury testimonies or witness interviews. They're from certain media outlets who some would consider unreliable. This is what Mueller spent most of his time on, developing a sort of narrative that would get him off the hook as special counsel when it was finally revealed that there was no collusion, and also satisfy the politicians and mainstream media execs that constantly annoyed him by demanding to hear the latest gossip about the case. From a political perspective, you can imagine how the Democrats would salivate over the mere possibility that a Republican president colluded with a foreign entity, especially one they despise so much. Their ultimate goal during his first term in office was obviously impeachment and removal. If that failed, Plan B would be to hamper his 2020 re-election bid. That is what we're seeing now with the obstruction of justice angle, which, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. From a business perspective, an investigation that lasted years would give them endless talking points every day and night on their silly shows. You have the liberal side who, like the Democrats, cannot stand the POTUS. Day after day, night after night, they discussed Mueller's investigation and the possibility that Trump would finally be found guilty of collusion, removed from office, and even thrown in prison. This was their wet dream. Then you had the conservative side, which was obviously the underdog, but make no mistake about it, they too benefited from the investigation. They used the opportunity to go on the defensive and stick up for the president, and it was a David versus Goliath type situation. It was great for ratings on both ends and brought in tons of revenue. Ultimately, if you have even half a brain in your head, you'd realize it's all a dog and pony show. As for certain redacted portions of the report, I can say you should focus on a few fully redacted pages. This is where A.G. Barr, I'm sure, was shaking his head and thinking to him, say, WTF. The first page actually starts on page 129. Without getting into too many specifics, this portion of Volume 2 surprisingly has to do with the current status of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You see, from all the pressure Mueller received to produce evidence of wrongdoing, the scope of the investigation as a whole was infinitely extended. Mueller knew certain portions of the report would certainly be redacted, with this being one of them. What do you think about that? It's about RBG.
Yeah. I was thinking about her yesterday, in a very platonic way, of course. I was thinking about her yesterday and just thinking, what the hell, where did that all go? It's just such long periods of not even questioning it at some points because of whatever's going on. But it's interesting. Everything you just read there is baffling. It's great. It's great that we're at this point. I'm so happy that we finally got here, and it's not as frustrating as it used to be. This is exciting now.
I'm pretty excited to think that the truth about RBG is about to come out. Of course, they're going to keep it redacted if it says something like, she's in a coma or, she's not actually in the Supreme Court and they've got her aides. Did you see the report I did maybe a month and a half ago? Someone had discovered in tape-recorded releases from the Supreme Court, they were, the recordings of their findings, they discovered that there was actually audio insertion of RBG's voice. They had taken pieces and it was the exact same piece in two different places.
Yeah, I brought that up. I think after you put it out there, I brought it up on a Friday night show.
Okay.
Because I wanted to see what people thought, and I don't know what it was. The whole thing here that comes up for me is whether or not that thing that you covered all that time ago was, if that's true, A, where's the original point that she said it? Where's the original point that she said it? And whether or not this is real, is she video phoning in? Is she a hologram in there? Well, what's going on? Because you think about the people who need to be complicit in this kind of a cover-up. First of all, the president never catches wind that she's still not showing up for oral arguments. And why hasn't anybody walked up to Neil Gorsuch on a lunch break and say, hey, Neil, how did Ruth look today? Why don't we get anybody to corroborate? They're supposed to be colleagues, all of them.
I completely get it. There's a lot of people that would have to be kept quiet on this. But that tape was actually downloaded. The Supreme Court allows for downloading of oral arguments like that. So that's where it actually came from. Now, the actual original recording where it came from, they could have taken it and lifted it from any of her previous arguments that were recorded. But of course, there are hundreds, if not thousands of those. So I don't think that anybody's going through all of them and found the original piece. But very interesting either way. Well, listen, we're out of time, Frank. I want to thank you for joining us. Is there anything final you want to say? I've got, I believe I've got your YouTube page in the comments below. Any place that you want people to go to be able to find you?
Yeah, just you know what? First of all, just because YouTube is such a scary place, as much as it should be a fantastic place, we just don't know. I think we're all on borrowed time over here. So yeah, you can find me at the Quite Frankly YouTube, but there's just go quitefranklypodcast.com. That's where we are everywhere, all that stuff. But you have such a great audience, man. I tell you, I love watching you on Saturday nights. I love sending you super chats. I love your dogs barking. And we have like 2,500 people or so watching right now. You guys are all very, very welcome on Monday night to hang out with us at 7:00 p.m. We are live Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. on the web, on there, Periscope, Twitch, D Live. So I would love to host many of you in our house. It would be a fantastic night. And thank you so much for the time here, man. You've really built yourself a fantastic channel, and I love all of your analysis and the conversations you strike up. I'm just happy to have been a part of one.
Awesome. Well, everything that you just said is likewise, Frank. I love your program, and I would highly suggest that anybody go check out his live streams because they're always just chock full of great information. And your crew that you got there is a good little group, and the audience is just as welcoming over there. Like anytime I've popped in and thrown something in the chat, I get a bunch of people that are like, "Hey, Red Pill, good to see you."
We got him, man. This is it. This is the new media.
All right, dude. Well, we should do this on a more regular basis. Thank you so much, Frank, for joining us, and thank you everybody in the audience. I want to thank everyone for joining us. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.